Karibu, and heads up, I cannot sing. So, Your Excellency, Professor, maybe I can say my friend, Governor Peter of Kisumu County, architect George, I don't know how to pronounce it, George Ndegu, President of the Architectural Association of Kenya, the Chair of National Housing Corporation, the ED of National Construction Authority, the Chair of Kenya National Highways, the President of East Africa Institute of Architects, past AAK presidents, council members, the Royal Institute of British Architects, all distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great privilege to me to join you this evening at the opening of your 2025 Annual Convention. The theme, Shaping the Urban Future Towards Sustainable, Equitable, Resilient, and Smart Cities for All. I think the theme itself explains my presence here, in addition to what the governor shared before. A solid partnership between Kisumu and UN Habitat, that, to be very fair and fair to the colleagues and the team present here, started way before I arrived in Kenya and took over this position exactly 1 year and 2 months ago. So my visit here is also part of my journey of learning about Kenya, learning from Kenya, and engaging with stakeholders in Kenya. As one of the two only organizations with UN organizations, entities with headquarters in the Global South, with headquarters in Africa, with headquarters in Kenya, I feel I have the obligation to be present in the host country and to deep understand what's happening here and engage in shaping the urban future here in Kenya as well. As you probably know, we just approved our new strategic plan for the period 26-29. And this took place, the endorsement by 105 member states took place in May in Nairobi this year. And the idea and the full endorsement to this strategic plan is related to the fact that, A, we are living a global housing crisis. Global housing crisis that is today affecting countries both from the global north and the global south. In the global north today, countries are facing historic affordability crisis. Young people cannot afford to rent houses or to buy houses. Elderly cannot afford to stay. Migrants are struggling to establish themselves in cities. We see homelessness. In the global south, we have been dealing with affordability gap historically. It has been a structural issue that countries in the global south face. The sizes of the markets have been limited to 5-10% maybe, the households. Meaning that the vast majority of the population, they cannot afford to go to the market and buy a house. We also see countries facing with the fiscal limitation, which impose restriction in the housing policies. And there's a gap. There's a gap between the housing policies and the markets, and this gap has been fulfilled historically by the people themselves, building formally, informally, and incrementally. So this is the reality that we live. At the same time, we see the loss of homes, by conflicts. We are observing severe conflicts in this continent, in other continents, that are generating, the loss of thousands of houses. We are witnessing also the loss of home to climate events, to disasters everywhere. Fires, flooding, landslides, sea level rise, all types of threats are affecting residents of cities everywhere in the world. Nevertheless, the ones living in vulnerable territories, in informal settlements, are the ones who are paying the highest price and are facing the highest burden. The second critical aspect of our strategic plan that I would like to highlight, and it's related to the historic mission and with the DNA of UN Habitat, is the support to local action, the support for participatory multi-level governance. And this is another reason for us to be here and to engage with Kisumu, to make sure that we strengthen local action that we found is extremely important. The United Nations system recognized member states more and more the extremely importance of local action for us to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. We have only 5 years to go. And climate action. When we talk about housing, local action couldn't mean more, because at the minimum, houses need to be built somewhere. There's a ground, and this ground is local. This ground is rooted into cities, municipalities, under the authority of local leaders and under the oversight of local communities. So if we want to overcome the challenges that we face in terms of housing, it's critical to understand how local action can leverage and maximize the resources and the legal frameworks that are available nationally. So we understand that addressing housing, land, basic services, addressing the transformation of informal settlements, and here we are talking about 1 billion living in informal settlements, almost 3 billion in inadequate conditions of housing, 300 million living in homelessness situation, 120 million houses being lost by forced involuntary displacement. We understand that addressing this issue, we, with the United Nations system, will be able to have impact in 3 critical areas. One is poverty, and the importance and the urgency to generate prosperity. We all understand the linkages between having an address and finding a job, having an address and remaining at school, having an address and adequate housing conditions and remaining healthy. The importance of housing, addressing housing to overcome all the humanitarian crises that we are facing, prevention, recovery, reconstruction from conflicts and from disasters. We cannot see disasters affecting cities over and over and having the same negative impact. We have to address housing, address resilience, and housing is a critical entry point. So building back, but building back better, improving the conditions of people. And then finally, the importance of addressing housing to face the climate challenges that we have today. So there are many intersections between cities and urban and environment and climate change. We are still working with scientists very hard, connecting researchers and practitioners to improve our comprehension of all these linkages. And here the work with you, practitioners, and with you that are also researching will be critical. But we see that at the end of the day, cities represent 70% of emissions, and cities represent a large proportion, over 60%, of energy consumption. So it is impossible to address the challenges of climate change if we don't look at cities. But then if we look at cities and we see how urbanization is unfolding, even in urbanized regions, what we observe is that cities are growing much more in territory than in population, at least 50%. So, and this is happening everywhere, meaning that the way that we are living and building our houses needs to change. And the new urban agenda gives us very critical parameters for that. The new urban agenda recognizes the importance of compact cities. The new urban agenda talks about participatory, inclusive, multi-level governance, the importance of local action. The new urban agenda talks about recognizing the principles of the social and ecological function of the land. And this is something that we often forget, because we all understand the economic value of the land. But when, Governor, you talk about the seafront, and I just came from a very, very brief field visit to the waterfront, I see the enormous social and ecological capital that is there, and that you were able to recognize in your master plan, meaning that your master plan is convergent to the new urban agenda, as the work of AAK, from what I was briefed and what I learned from your organization and what I heard from George in his initial speech. So we also understand that if we sprawl too much, this will generate higher needs for infrastructure and more emissions. And it's more expensive for cities. And there are several studies that prove that cities that are more sprawled, they have less revenues or less probability of increasing their revenues than cities that are more compact. So it's less revenues, it's more costs, it's more social segregation, it's more environmental impact. So densification, and you both mentioned that, is one aspect that we have to look at. But also admit that culturally we still face many barriers, not only here but everywhere, because we still want to live the way our grandparents lived. But this is not sustainable, and this is one thing that we need to review, and this is embedded in our new strategic plan. This is embedded in our partnership and the potential of our collaboration with AAK. So I would like to recognize, too, the partnership and how our presence here and this conversation is aligned with our work with the national government here in Kenya. And this is very important, because besides having a presence in the country and having a high-level, team, and Barry is here, our head of the office and our program here in Kenya, have been working in various parts of the countries and in alignment with the national government. There is a very strategic partnership that I would like to share with you at the global level. And this is the interesting part of this conversation that we are having here today, because I feel we can have a very grounded, very local conversation, but at the same time, very, very well connected with the global challenges that we face and the global agendas that we are pursuing. So with Kenya, Kenya is being currently co-chairing with France the first of its kind open-ended working group on housing. This working group is with member states. You are welcome as observers. It has been established as a result of a resolution 2/7, that recognizes the need to promote access to adequate housing for all. It was approved at the UN Habitat Assembly in 2023. So the work of the group started in December, has been ongoing this year, and will culminate this year with an in-person meeting in Nairobi at our headquarters on the 23rd and 24th of October. Why this working group is so important? This working group is important because we are the custodians of the New Urban Agenda, we are the custodians of SDG 11, and I just spoke that we put housing at the center of our strategic plan. But we have several gaps. We don't have, for example, a global definition for homelessness. We don't have a global definition for informal settlements, which is SDG 11.1. We don't have sustainability in our current definition for adequate housing. So member states are looking at these definitions, and these are very important for us to monitor progress and to build this global kind of social contract and help you in building the local social contract that you need for the implementation of your master plan. This open-ended working group is also generating recommendations on how to address social housing. And Governor mentioned the Kibui state, the Moroni, the experience that we are doing here with support of the European Union and other partners. I just visited the site and I spoke with the community, and I could see how engaged and full of expectations the community is. I think this could be a very good example of a community-led, bottom-up approach of medium to low density housing that is built where the city already is, so replacing existing structures and improving existing structures in a way that the community is part of the process from the design until the maintenance of the mechanism. So leveraging social capital here, cooperatives that already exist, and leveraging schemes that are already happening. These people are already there and paying rent there. So we are experiencing that here, and we are hoping to showcase that overall. So the working group is looking at the recommendations. What kind of policies? We also spoke about the National Housing Program, right? And the levy and everything. So Kenya is an example of how to leverage domestic resources to fund housing. Housing is very expensive, and we need massive results. So it's very important that we look at these two models, and we see how those are complementary within a master plan of a city, because we need to accelerate, but we also need to build the foundations for sustainable housing in the future. So we are looking at recommendations of social housing, recommendations on how to address informal settlements, how to address sustainability in housing, how to look at finance and find mechanisms to fund housing. And here we are looking at creative schemes like the national scheme, but also how cities can improve their revenues through land-based finance and other types of schemes. So this open-ended working group is very strategic, and I'm just coming from New York. Last week I was at the General Assembly, United Nations General Assembly, and President Ruto launched it with other heads of states and ministers from Africa, but also from the Arab region, from Asia, and from Latin America, a call to action to urge countries to put housing at the center, to leverage domestic finance, to put housing at the center of the budget of their domestic finance, but also at the center of their political action. And I agree, George, more and more we are seeing that housing is becoming at the center of the political action. We can say that for many countries in Africa, we can say that for the African Union, for the European Union, and so on and so forth. We are also working with Nairobi, cities of Nairobi and Paris to conform a hub of experiences, and I hope that Kisumu can be part of this ecosystem of experiences that can orient cities elsewhere to identify their strategies for housing. I would like to conclude this opening remarks by mentioning the importance of partnerships. And if we look at our strategic plan, housing is at the center, but we have means of implementation. One being urban planning and finance, the other one multi-level governance, I already mentioned, leveraging resources, I already mentioned, working together in communications and advocacy, which we are doing right now. But there is one critical meaning of implementation, and you are all part of that, is the need to work in partnerships, in collaboration, in co-creation, and building coalitions. The dimension of the challenge, and if we see how urbanization is unfolding, especially in Africa and Southeast Asia, regions that are going to become or to receive about 2 billion people in the next 20 to 30 years, we cannot do that alone. There's no single organization, entity globally that can do that alone. So it's very important that we work together. This is the same discourse and the same speech that I made this afternoon to the community that we met in Kibuyu State. Just throwing the towel, there's no way out. So I really hope, George, that also, at the end of this event, we find, more ways to collaborate, because I can see here, the resources that you have in Kenya, and the gigantic, amount of talents that we have even here in this room alone. So finally, everybody is invited to the 13th edition of the World Urban Forum next year in May, from the 17th to the 22nd. We hope that the World Urban Forum will be a critical step for us to solidify these global coalitions, to bring these local stories to the global stage, to bring the local perspective to the global stage, but also the other way around, and create this, these links that are so important for us to overcome the challenges that we have. So you are all welcome, and the forum is just 1 month ahead, the moment where we are going to be in New York reviewing the 10 years of the New Urban Agenda next year. And most important, building the social contract for the next 10 years. What is it possible to be done in the next 10 years of the New Urban Agenda? And I've seen transformation before, George, in many other places. Transformation is possible. Thank you very much. Asante sana.